Good
So
evening.
my name's Doug Beckett. I'm one of the co-founders of the Energy Transition Group, and like to introduce our guest for tonight, Jonathan Peter. Jonathan was born in Winnipeg, and his brother lives in Prince George, and Jonathan's been in China for many, many years, an engineer who worked in the oil industry, and I think he's quite fascinated with the energy transition that's happening, and has an inside seat to the energy transition in China, and also with electric vehicles. So we'll get a little bit of insight. We'll show a short little video on battery shop swapping. Then we'll get into questions and answers and discussion. So take it away, Jonathan.
Okay, thanks very much, Doug. It's so lovely to be back in Prince George. I'm not really there in body, but I'm quite excited to talk to you all. I used to come up to Prince George when I was a youngster at going to university, and I'd work in the mills there, and I really enjoyed Prince George, and I really loved the place. It's like a second home for me in Canada. So right now I'm in Quanzhou, a city in Hunan province in China. So you can see Hunan province is this red blotch on the map. It's in the south part of China, and we're in the south of Hunan province in a place called Quanzhou. It means a city in a forest. That's the meaning of the word. And it's on the 26th parallel in mainland China, which is about even with Miami. But it has a climate that's quite different from Miami. It's a lot cooler. So the city of Quanzhou has more than the city of Quanzhou I'm going to describe. China has more than 100 cities of at least 1 million people. So this is just one of those 100 cities. Quanzhou, where I live, has a metro population of 1.13 million. Greater Quanzhou, which it means all the counties that belong to the Quanzhou administrative region, spans about 20,000 square kilometers, and has a total population of 4.6 million people. So it's actually very large. If I was going to characterize the size of Quanzhou, I'd say it's something like similar to Victoria, but a lot denser population. And what you can see in the counties are these mountains, particularly south of Quanzhou are these huge mountains. And they're very strange structures, actually. They're in geological structures, which are quite amazing. And this is a place called Mangshan National Park, all these mountains here. And here you can see these. And it's an amazing place to go. This is the secretary or the receptionist in my school in Quanzhou. And Serena. So she does these.
We're seeing short... the video, but not the sound. So keep going.
Okay. So this is at Mangshan, where she's exploring and climbing up those places. I've been to those places too. It's absolutely incredible. Chenzhou is on the Chenjiang River, and there's this place called Waiyaoping in Chenzhou, which is at the confluence of the Leishui River and the Chengjiang River. This place has been a waterway transfer station between North China, Hongyang and Changsha, and the south of China, Shaoguang and Guangzhou, for at least 2,000 years. So this is an incredibly important historic position. Chenzhou also has, in the middle of the city, it has a lake. It's a small lake surrounded by a beautiful park, and the lake stores water for the city water supply, which it gets from another much larger lake called Dongjiang Lake in Zhexing County. So this is Dongjiang Lake, or part of it, the southern part of it. And it is mountainous. It has several islands, caves, canyons, waterfalls, and forests. The lake has an average depth of 167 feet and an area of 62 square miles. It's an artificial lake, and it was created in the 1980s from the construction of a hydroelectric dam on the Leishui River. So this is the dam, Dongjiang Lake Dam. It formed Dongjiang Lake through an arch dam on the Leishui River. They set up the dam on the 26th parallel, and the dam supports 500 megawatt hydroelectric power station. The dam also provides flood control and water supply to downtown Chenzhou. You can see the mountains again all around. Now, I just want to go up in scale. We're now talking about China altogether. China's total capacity for hydroelectric power in 2024 was 552 gigawatts. The global capacity was 1,416 gigawatts. So you can see China is generating about a third of the hydroelectric power in the world. Most of this comes from the area close to the Three Gorges Dam in Sichuan province, which is the largest dam in the world with a 22.5 gigawatt capacity. This is the Three Gorges Dam you'll see at the top left-hand corner. The Yangtze River region also hosts 4 key upstream cascade power stations. So you can see them possibly down here on this map. There's 4 of them: Wudongde, Beihatan, Shiluodu, and Xiangjiaba. And these 4 stations are upstream of the massive Three Gorges Dam, and they create the whole Three Gorges power production, which is about 69 gigawatts capacity, which is quite a substantial part of this 500 gigawatts, 550 gigawatts. So most of the power is coming from there to drive the energy transition fundamentally in China. But there's a lot going on outside that. So first of all, you've got pumped storage as well as these standard hydroelectric dams. So this is the largest pumped storage power station in the world. Fengning It's in the north of China, and it has a total installed capacity of 3.6 gigawatts, which seems quite small compared to the Three Gorges, but it does something quite different. It does pumped storage. So when there's a high demand from power, it takes the power from letting the water go down through a generator to a lower basin from the upper basin. When there's no demand or low demand for power, then it will pump that water back up to the upper basin. So it's using cheap energy to pump it back up, and it's getting more expensive energy running it down. So it's storage, like a battery, essentially. On top of that, you've got the transmission of this power from these hydroelectric dams, from solar panel farms, and from wind power. And all of that power has to be transmitted to the places where it's going to be used in China. So to do that, we use ultra high voltage DC transmission. This is a huge example of the ultra high voltage DC transmission station at Beihetan, in that passageway upstream of the Three Gorges. So Beihetan's 16 gigawatt power station also transmits energy to the coastal area of Zhejiang province across an 800 kilovolt ultra high voltage direct current transmission line. So what's the advantage of UHVDC? In China, UHVDC, I missed one. Okay. The advantage is that when you transmit ultra high voltage through a long cable, you reduce you make the power higher by reducing the voltage, increasing the voltage and reducing the amperage, reducing the power. So you get it transmitting much, much further with very low losses. And that means that you're going to have losses between 1% and 2% of the electricity that you're transmitting across thousands of kilometers. And you can see all these interconnectors all across China, and you see them as you're traveling around. There's the one here from Beihetan all the way to the coast. They're basically going from the west and the northwest to the coastal areas where the population is. So they're transmitting all the power from hydro, wind, and solar power, all the renewable energy going to rich western regions in China across thousands of kilometers to the densely populated eastern cities like Shanghai, Beijing here, Shenyang, Guangzhou, Hong Kong. So these cities are receiving power mostly from areas like Xinjiang in the northwest. This is all desert area. There's a lot of deserts all around here. This is Inner Mongolia. And this is a place called Ningxia. So what Ningxia is transmitting is electricity from solar panels to Changsha across a massive cable here. And that's getting sent on to Chenzhou. And the power coming from Ningxia is coming from these solar panels. Since 2016, Huawei and Baofeng Group have jointly built a large solar panel plants over goji berry plantations in the Gobi Desert in Ningxia. Now the solar panels have cut evaporation from the soil by 30 to 40% and increased vegetation coverage by 86%. So this is agrivoltaic production. As of the end of 2020, these solar power plants had generated 4.31 billion kilowatts of electricity, displacing 2 million tons of CO2 emissions, which is equivalent to planting 89 million trees. So you can see the people working under the solar panels to harvest the goji berries. This is a massive area of solar panel generation. And there's massive areas like this in Xinjiang as well as in Ningxia. So there's enormous solar power coming from the north and the northwest of China. The Ningxia to Hunan connector. So in this slide here, there's the Ningxia to Hunan connector. That's 36 gigawatts per year transmission. It comes to Hunan here, and it comes through this particular line. It's just been installed, and in 2025, it will be transmitting more than 36 billion kilowatt hours of power from Ningxia to Hunan annually, reducing carbon emissions by over 16 million tons. So I want to jump to Chenzhou. So all of that power from Ningxia is coming to this place called Changsha here. Chenzhou is down here, and between Changsha and the Yangtze is up here, the Yangtze River. So for over 2,000 years, there's been traffic on the rivers coming down in this direction from the north, from the Yangtze River in middle part of China, down south to Guangdong, which is the very southernmost port area of China. So people used to transfer goods across this road, these waterways, all the way down to Guangdong. But when they got to Chenzhou, they hit mountains, which of course you've seen. And they didn't have rivers going through the mountains. Obviously, the rivers were coming down from the mountains. They were being created by the mountains. And they had to get their goods across to Guangdong so they could go onto the rivers that were going down to the ocean, in the Southern Ocean. And so they moved the goods by boat all down this road, by River Road, and they get to Quanzhou, and they unloaded their goods and took them across the pass through the mountains on horseback and on mules and carrying. So that road is still in existence after 2,200 years. It's recorded on readable bamboo slips like this one here, which were written in Chinese characters during the Han Dynasty and are still around, still up in museums and still being looked at. And people can actually read, because they are in Chinese characters, people can read the history of that time. They found out this whole story about the mule and horse road and how it was helping traffic pass from the rivers of the north to the vast southern range of mountains, making the passage to the main trading ports in Guangdong. So this is an inheritance, in a way, of how China has been navigating the rivers, the waterways, the natural situation in China for over 2,000 years. They understand how to improve it and make it work for everybody. And interestingly enough, is the high-speed trains. So you can see here all the train routes, high-speed train routes around China. And today Quanzhou is a key stop on the main high-speed rail line operating between Beijing and the north, in the north of China, and Hong Kong, Kowloon in the south, Kowloon here, and Beijing here in the north. And the high-speed train was one particular train that goes specifically from Beijing right through to Kowloon, and one of the key stations along the way is Quanzhou. So currently there are more than 500 railway stations in China's major cities, about 113 of those cities linked to the massive railway network by these G-series fully electric high-speed trains. You can see the inside here, very comfortable. There's a car with snacks and extremely clean and comfortable and fast, and no vibration. Very, very comfortable. There also are these kind of trains, freight trains, at this, and Quanzhou is an inland dry port. Because of its significant mining, manufacturing, and export industry for key minerals, including graphite, rare earths, lithium iron phosphate batteries, power storage systems, and even solid-state batteries. This is a freight train carrying containers, which leaves the international dry port in Quanzhou and goes to Europe. So I don't know how often it's going, but it goes fairly regularly. So it goes all across the railways through through Russia and comes out close to Europe. And I think there's another railway that goes through the states like Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and all those places and continues through to Europe as well. Now, as I said, Chenzhou is famous for minerals. Since 1904, Chenzhou's economy has been driven by minerals, rare earths, metals, gems, silver, gold, jade. This is amethyst in a massive thunder egg, we used to call it. And this is a silver teapot that's made in Chenzhou. And this is the raw gold here that you find, you'd call it a nugget, but this is a spectacular one. About 70 mineral types have been found in Chenzhou, among which reserves of bismuth, tungsten, fluorite, molybdenum, and microcrystalline graphite rank first in China. So these are really key minerals for many, many purposes. There's also a very substantial mining and processing industry in Chenzhou. So here's me going underground and looking at calcite and fluorite crystals that I'm being shown. Chenzhou also manufactures products or systems for doing the processing for mining, like crushers and washing and these tanks which continue to separate different kinds of minerals out of a slurry of different crushed ore. There's also a substantial amount of lithium in Chenzhou and a lot of lithium battery production. So there are lithium battery cells for drones, off-grid power storage, small electric vehicle batteries with built-in battery management systems, batteries for solar storage systems, and solid-state batteries. So in particular, this company that sells the lithium batteries and the lithium battery products called Joyson has just in this year launched a solid state battery. And I think it's not really competitive yet. I don't think solid state batteries, I think solid state batteries have amazing capabilities. Like this one has a much higher energy density than normal lithium batteries, which are only about 350 watt hours per kilogram. But the solid state batteries can get up to 500 to 600 watt hours per kilogram, which is incredible energy density. And they also have much better temperature adaptability. So for liquid lithium-ion batteries, because they have a liquid inside them, nearly all lithium-ion batteries have that. The temperature range is about minus 30 degrees to plus 60 degrees centigrade. But the solid-state batteries can operate in a wider temperature range of minus 40 degrees to 150 degrees centigrade, which is quite an enormous range of operation. And I think it's something that people who live in the north of British Columbia really understand. I don't know if the claims for solid-state batteries are going to work or if they're competitive yet. But I do know that this development is going on all over China, not just in this company, but in the biggest companies in China, like CATL. And CATL is the largest battery maker in the world at the moment. Solar systems manufacture, that's also being run in Chenzhou. So it's cheaper for larger branded corporations to operate in Chenzhou, to have their factories in Chenzhou, because of course the labor is cheaper, the land is cheaper, and they've got materials from mines that are available on the spot. So it's much better than operating in locations like Chenzhou where they're based. So there's one solar panel factory in Chenzhou that I know of. So this factory is producing 1,000 tons per day of high-grade extra clear glass panels from 8 lines. These glass panels are sent to another automated assembly line that completes the product, adding silicon wafers, wiring, and framing. So you can see all of these lines in factories for renewable energy systems are being run by robots. So there's very little manual work on here. It's mainly run by robots, and that way they can get standardization, modularization for all the products, and that's what makes them cheap. That's what makes solar panels cheap. That's what makes wind farms cheap, because they're all modular units which can be reproduced over and over and over again by factories. They're not like much bigger things like a refinery or a nuclear plant, where you can spend years to construct create the infrastructure to produce the electricity. This is much, much more easy to produce electricity, produce equipment that will give you electricity. So there's also wind power generation in Shenzhou. When I traveled south down to Hong Kong on the high-speed train, I can see windmills lined up along the route throughout southern Hunan. So they're all in the top of the mountains or the hills. And this wind power catches the predominant south winds that sweep up from South China Sea. And there's a lot of wind usually. Chenzhou has a target for renewables. So this is like Chenzhou is one of 100 cities of more than 1 million people. So you can imagine all the cities that are 100 over 1 million people in China will also have targets for renewables. So they're all producing renewables that will support their local region. By 2025, the total installed capacity of wind power and photovoltaic products will exceed 8.5 1.5 million kilowatts in Chenzhou. On March 17th, 2024, Chenzhou Municipal People's Government formally signed a 20 billion yuan or 3.9 billion Canadian contract with Sany Group. This agreement includes an intelligent manufacturing industrial park to build a factory for wind power equipment manufacturing, 2 billion yuan, and an 18 billion yuan wind farm. So these are the manufacturing is 2 billion yuan, and the wind farms to go out and install the wind power in on the mountains and get it to work is 18 billion yuan. It's the majority of the cost. Now, Chenzhou, going back, is part of the nationwide grid. So there is a line in the energy interconnector from Ningxia, which is up here in the north, close to Inner Mongolia. This is Inner Mongolia at the top, the very north of China. And Ningxia is just below. It's a small area just below. And there is this interconnector that I talked about, which goes down to Hunan, and it hits Changsha, or just a little way south of Changsha. And from there, it's transmitted by probably an AC line to Chenzhou. So the interconnector needs to be also supplemented by local renewables and demand-side batteries in Chenzhou in order to balance the grid. So they'll have that in other parts of Hunan as well. They'll have balancing batteries because you need this kind of structure. This on the left side is what's at Ningxia. You've got the renewable power plants, and they have batteries or pumped storage. Probably batteries. They could be using the pumped storage as well. And when it gets transmitted through these interconnectors, it comes to Hunan province. And there'll also be grid connected batteries to adjust, to take up the power when there's not much demand and store it in the batteries. And when there is more demand, it can be released from the batteries, the grid connected batteries. So the batteries act as storage sites for the electricity, which can be intermittent. And it reduces the intermittency. And when you get to Chenzhou, you're talking about the demand side. So the demand side batteries that are required in Chenzhou to smooth the power to provide power to the local industries and people in Chenzhou. So this is the demand side battery storage site in Chenzhou, part of it. In 2021, the second phase of battery energy storage project site in Chenzhou was connected to the grid, improving the level of new energy consumption in the province, improving the power supply capacity of Hunan power grid during peak load hours in Chenzhou, and supporting the transient safety and stability of the power grid. This is much bigger, but this is just a shot of part of it. Now, jumping to the consumers. of renewable energy. And I need to describe Chenzhou's environment in a way and how people are adjusting to this new energy system. In the past, Chenzhou City's major development dynamic was the movement of rural people into livable urban environment. So in the past 10 years, there's been this enormous push by the central government to bring people that lived in the countryside in a very poor parts of the countryside, especially into the cities where they could have families, send their children to school easily, and have small businesses and develop their lives and build up their income. And so there was a huge amount of support for, you could say, financial support, as well as aspirational, in a way, support for people to move and to build a new life in the big city, in the cities like Chenzhou. Chenzhou wasn't a big city 10 years ago. It was quite a small city. And since then, they built these huge communities, which are apartment blocks in Chenzhou. They're all, everybody lives in an apartment in Chenzhou. There's no private houses with gardens and suburban living. It's all in apartments. So this cluster of apartment buildings here is a community, what they would call a community. I live in an apartment here, but it's what they call a community. A community has usually private gardens for exercise and play areas, and some communities also, like this one, include shops and supermarkets, parking areas, and chargers. So here's, in another community, is a charging station. You can see behind the apartment blocks, and there's a charging station here in the front, which people can charge their cars at. Here's another community again, which has another charging station and a restaurant and various things. Another aspect of people's lives that's changed fundamentally since I first came here 8 years ago is people switched to electric vehicles. And in particular, they like electric motorbikes. So you see hundreds, everybody's traveling on these motorbikes. They're very popular products. You can see here in the shop, you see very many shops like this, all up and down one street in Chenzhou. They have many different brands of motorbikes. People use them to go to the market, to go to school, to go to work. Many reasons to use the motorbikes. To go somewhere with your girlfriend. To these two here are kind of motorcycle types, so they're kind of cool. The Da Vinci is made in North China by some very smart guys that graduated from Beijing University, and engineers, and they just started this company, and they built really cool very fast electric motorcycle called Da Vinci, and it's sold overseas. And the idea is has a model which is like a cool motorbike, but most of them are scooter types like this at the top right-hand corner. And people that ride the motorbikes, they also carry things. They have blankets on them for keeping them warm in the cold weather. And some of them have umbrellas on them to stop the rain. They're like little comfortable vehicles for transport. There's also the taxis. You can see a taxi here in the background of this picture. In Chenzhou, taxis are easy ride. I use taxis constantly. I never need a car. Flag fall is about $1.20 Canadian. And a typical ride in the city is about $2 Canadian. Maximum fare to railway or airport is about $5. So electrical energy is cheap. The electric taxis in Chenzhou are predominantly BYD, and some are Ion as well. But BYD is probably the most popular. So you can see all the vehicles that are electric will have a green license plate. So you can identify it really easily. This is an electric vehicle. Also, all the buses are electric. They've been electrifying the buses since about 2004, I think. No, 2011. They are now 100%. All the buses are electric. Bus rides anywhere in the city cost 40 cents. There's lots of advances going on with batteries for buses as well. So CATL has just announced a new battery, 175 watt hours per kilogram, the highest in the electric bus industry. It has the battery has a service life of up to 15 years or 1.5 million kilometers and a warranty of 10 years or 1 million kilometers. So the technology is getting more and more efficient day by day, as fast as possible. In 2021, the most popular car in rural cities like Chenzhou was the Wuling Mini. And this car was manufactured by General Motors in a joint venture with SAIC Motor and Liuzhou Wuling Motors. And this car was immediately popular, hugely popular in Chenzhou. It just suited the people's lives. People can drive their kids to school, they can drive to work. It's very small, very cheap, $4,000 Canadian. That was the cheapest electric vehicle in China. Very simple technology, and just comfortable enough to manage 4 people, or 2 people in the front and a bunch of things in the back. So there's a convertible version, and there was these hardtop versions. So I want to talk a bit about electric vehicles. So this is the basic electric vehicle. This is what it is. It's a skateboard, and that it's called a skateboard. The platform that's built on, this is the BYD platform. Typically, the platform contains a 400 to 800 volt DC battery pack, And that's in the middle here. That's embedded in the floor of the vehicle between the two axles. Each axle can have up to 2 electric motors. So each one of those wheels can have an electric motor, but generally there's only 1 electric motor on the front axle or the back axle, but sometimes you can have 4 if you really want enormous power. An inverter converts the high power DC in the battery, 400 to 800 volts, to AC current. The inverter actually modulates the power through the AC current. It modulates speed and regenerative braking. So when you put on the brakes, it's being done by the inverter that's modulating the AC current. It's just like a big generator in a car. There are no gears. You don't need gears with them. So it's very, very simple technology, fundamentally. It's just that it's elegant and powerful. So there's a lot of talk about batteries, but in the last 2-3 years, the batteries that were being used in most electric cars, NMC batteries, lithium-ion batteries called NMC, or nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries were being used. They had high energy density, which means lighter weight for more power. And they were used throughout North America. I think they're still being used, mostly NMC batteries in North America. But in China, the last 3 years, we've changed over to LFP, lithium iron, and phosphorus, lithium iron phosphate batteries. So they're actually much lower cost because nickel and cobalt are both expensive materials. They're low cost. So the LFP cathode active material in CATL is 43% less expensive than NMC. And LFP have a much longer life cycle than NMC. NMC about 2,000 charges or 3,000 charges, and it's pretty worn out. But the LFP battery can go over 10,000 cycles. So it's got a much longer life cycle, and it's also very high thermal stability. It doesn't catch fire. These ones can catch fire. The NMCs can catch fire much, much more easily. These ones are very difficult. So the safety in LFP batteries is much better. So these LFP have been for the past 2 or 3 years in China, have been the gold standard for batteries. There are a lot of advances in batteries, but they are gradual. This was a major change to LFP. So I'm going to look at some of the cars here very quickly. I just want you to see them. These are the ones that are on sale here in China, and people are buying them like crazy. So the Wuling Bingo, which is an upgrade from the Wuling Mini, very, very nice. It's got a bed in the back if you want to. It can be a seat, or it can be a bed. It can fold out to a bed, which is amazing. And here, look at the ranges on these. So 203 kilometers or 330 3-kilometer range. So that depends on which motor you have. If you've got the 30 kilowatt motor or the 68 kilowatt motor, so you've got a choice. So everything else is fairly easy to read. White and black colors, green and black, or pink and white and fully black. So there's a variety of colors you can buy it in. Then you've got the Aura, which is about the same size, a little bit bigger, slightly bigger, 500-kilometer range. So this one was 200, 300. This one has 500-kilometer range. It's got one motor, 105 kilowatt motor. Then you've got the Aura Punk Cat, which is a bit bigger. It looks like a Volkswagen. It's definitely a copy of Volkswagen style, but the Beetle style, but it's much bigger than that. It's got a 500-kilometer range. It's much like the Good Cat, but it's got more space inside. Then you've got the BYD Dolphin, which is about that size. This one's the smallest one. So that's 280 kilometers range. Then the BYD Dolphin, that's the Dolphin Mini. This is the Dolphin. So that's 340 or 427-kilometer range, depending on which motor you have. The 180 or 70 kilowatt motor or the 150 kilowatt motor. Then the NIO ET5. So the NIO, I want to show you a video later about the NIO. NIO can be, the batteries can be swapped or they can be charged with a normal charging. But battery swapping has really taken off with the NIO throughout China. I think there's 2,000 to 3,000 swapping stations around China. Any city you can go to, you can get the battery swap. So you can see more of that after this. Then you've got the pickup from Geely. Geely builds Volvo worldwide. So Geely is a significant auto company. And it's got 3 different ranges depending on the battery, and it uses at some point an NMC battery. Actually, they use an NMC battery because it's got really really a lot of energy density. So you can get payload of 865 kilograms, climbing at 95%, full load climbing 65%, and wading depth 81.5 centimeters. And it also provides power to the user through a normal panel power connector, 21 kilowatts, 2.1 kilowatts. And then you've got the Zeekr, which went, the Zeekr went on the New York Stock Exchange last month. I think it had a huge investment at that point. So it's got a 675 to 750 kilometer range, 100 kilowatt LFP battery. So this is CATL's new battery, the Qilin battery, which is very, very powerful. And you've got the Xiaomi SU7. So the Xiaomi SU7 has been extremely popular. It's got 220 kilowatt front motor and a back motor on the back axle, 275. It's got an 800 kilometer range. And the head of Ford Motor Company flew to China, bought one of these Xiaomi SU7s, flew it back to New York, and he's driven it every day since he bought it. He loves it. So that's pretty amazing, actually. So that's all I have to say, and if I'd love to hear any questions.
We are here.
Okay, you're there.
Yep. So, Anne, can you set up that video? We're going to watch an 8-minute video on battery swapping, but while Anne's setting that up, we can have time for one question, and then after the video, oh, there's the video. Let's just get going with the video, and then we'll do questions.
If you own or drive an electric car, then charging will be pretty familiar, whether it's at home or when you're out and about. It's part and parcel of owning or running an EV. Or is it? Chinese brand NIO thinks differently. Sure, you can plug in this ES8 just like any electric car, but this electric car has got a trick up its sleeve, and a game-changing one at that. You see, NIO believes there is a place for battery swap technology in the future of zero-emissions transportation. But this isn't pie-in-the-sky stargazing. This, for NIO, is here and now. By October 2021, the company had installed 517 power swap stations across China, allowing owners to switch their battery pack and go from empty to full in just 5 minutes. But an idea that started and indeed matured in China is coming to Europe, and given the fact that NIO already sells this big flagship ES8 here in Norway and EV uptake is so significant, where else would you put your first European battery swap station? So we're here to find out if this is the counter-argument to so-called range anxiety or charge anxiety. If you can swap your battery in the same time it takes you to fill up your car with petrol or diesel, could this be a viable future solution? We're here to find out. First things first, a service like this is only as good as the infrastructure, and clearly, having just a single site in the whole of Europe means that, for now at least, its appeal will remain limited. But let's very briefly look to China. As mentioned, with over 500 swap stations already in operation and big plans for plenty more, NIO is already performing more than 20,000 battery swaps per day. It wants to do the same in all main markets. While the UK is a little way down the pecking order, continental Europe is very much part of that plan. Norway today, Germany, Holland and Denmark soon. A total of 4,000 swap stations are coming, 1,000 of which NIO says will be outside of China. So NIO calls its battery swap technology a worry-free power solution. And okay, today we are going to experience it in a kind of controlled environment. We've got NIO representatives on hand should anything go wrong. But ultimately, it's exactly as a customer would experience it. So, in fact, if a customer turns up and they decide that they want the battery swapped, then we got to get out of the way because they take priority, and rightly so. But look, we've been driving the ES8 most of the morning. We've lost a significant amount of charge, and we're now at a point where we probably would be looking for a battery swap station. So look, we're going to call in our friend from NIO. This is Daniel from NIO.
Hi Richard, hello.
And you're going to talk us through the battery swap scenario.
Yes, we want to get as fast as possible to the next destination, so I would say let's get our 5-minute swap experience.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Let's go. I basically in front of me see the name of the station with the available batteries. We do order now.
Order placed. It's now your turn for power swap.
Start
Tap
power
on the
swap.
screen to start. Awesome. You please manually drive the car to a power swap area, then activate the brakes.
So just move it into the box, which I can see on the screen
Please
here.
press the brake pedal.
Please, the pleasure is yours.
You can tap to
press on the
park in a
start.
power swap station.
And we can forget about our hands and our feet.
Feet off the
No
pedal.
brake.
Power swap has started.
Once you've initiated the process, the car moves into place automatically, guided by 239 sensors and 4 cloud computing systems. Each battery hotel houses 13 batteries, kept at a steady 20 degrees for optimum performance. Presume that it would sense if a car was trying to come past.
Of course. It senses the position of the location of the vehicle, and also the relatively position of the vehicle with respect to the swap station. Once we approach the swap station, there's also a scan. We have QR codes, so the cameras of the vehicle are making a scan, and to identify that the vehicle is inside the power swap, and give the order to start the power swap process. Please, you can start the power swap.
Preparing. This may take some time. Please wait.
And our power swap operator just press on the OK button to start. Now we will feel that the car is going to be shifted a bit left to right to be in the perfect position to ensure that
power swap is about to
next
start.
stage the battery
During
is
this
completely
time,
aligned.
the
with the
vehicle may shake and make noise.
Once in place, the car is gently lifted by 50mm before the cells are unscrewed and removed by the machine. At this point, a fresh battery, charged to 90% and good for around 300 miles of range, is taken from the hotel, before 10 laser-guided bolts fix it back in with little more than a few clunks and a few clicks.
After this procedure, we have a safety procedure where there's a check the vehicle makes to ensure that everything and all the systems is all safe. And then, if you look at your driving steering wheel on the left, you will see a blue light, and it's the first heartbeat of the vehicle. It means that the vehicle is waking up, and you will experience that then the navigation system, all the auxiliary systems we had before, turn on again.
Most Neo owners will effectively lease their cars and pay a monthly subscription fee between 146 and 209 euros for the battery. This gives you 2 swaps or up to 200 kilowatt hours of rapid charging. Outside these parameters, the prices are pretty reasonable too. At the time of filming, Neo was charging a €10 flat fee plus 20 cents per kilowatt hour, effectively giving you a full battery for less than €30 or quite a bit less than rapid charging at, say, an Ionity 350 kilowatt charger.
Power swap completed.
Beyond
Be
refueling,
careful as you
Perfect.
drive out of the station.
We can go in drive mode and we can drive out.
And there you go, current battery level 90%.
90% to keep the health of the battery. We decided not to fully charge the battery, but mostly 90% provides you around 500 kilometers of range.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
If you thought it was just a simple switch like for like, Neo has another surprise up its sleeve. You see, Neo offers different battery packs ranging from 70 kilowatt hours right up to 150 kilowatt hours, meaning that in theory you could run a lighter and more efficient smaller battery model day to day, dock into a swapping station before a big trip, and almost instantly switch into a car with twice the range, all without you or your family so much as stepping out of the car. And all, we timed it, in less than 6 minutes. As impressive as this tech is, and believe you me, it really does feel like a potential glimpse at the future of electric vehicles. Ultimately, this tech is hampered by the fact it's only really ever going to be available to Neo customers. It's just not as scalable as Tesla's supercharger network. It's difficult to open up to third parties unless they take the platform and the battery tech wholesale. The thing is, are we needlessly overcomplicating things? Sure, it's a great talking point, and in action it's really impressive tech, but that talking point, when you're talking to your mates about it in the pub, they're going to be sat there with their car plugged in, their Tesla, their BMW, their Mercedes outside, just simply sucking up the electrons without any of the complication. Do you know what? I'm undecided. Head to drivingelectric.com for all the latest electric and hybrid car advice, news and reviews, and check us out on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Finally, while you're here, make sure you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and turn on notifications to ensure you never miss a video.
Okay, so for people in the room, we have remote mics now, so people online will actually be able to hear you. So anybody with a question?
Thank you. Hi, Lena is my name. And I had a few questions, but the one that as you were doing your presentation, I was just noticing that there was 2 different cars that they both had 150 kilowatt hour battery. And the first one, the range was over 500 kilometers, and the other one, the range was 400 and I forget what it was, 400
Yeah.
something. So
It's different.
is that just different things drawing from the battery depending on the car that helps determine the efficiency or distance?
It's the motors.
Right.
The other one, I don't recollect which one, but the other maybe has a bigger motor, or it has two motors, something like that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this was the range. Your question was about range?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was I just noticed that the first one that we looked at that had one of the battery sizes was 150 kilowatt hour, and it was over 500 kilometer range. I think it was a baby blue car. I can't remember the name of it, but
Yeah, and I've seen a
Right.
Chinese EV with 150 kilowatt battery with 1,000-kilometer range. So
Okay,
you're
yeah.
talking about different fuel efficiencies. It's
Right.
going to be different battery sizes, different
Yeah.
acceleration and performance, all
Mhm.
sorts of factors.
Yeah, it's the engines. The number of motors actually is probably one of the factors. It could be one of the factors, but
Yeah,
I'm
that would make sense.
the 150 kilowatt battery doesn't sound right to me. The batteries are usually 400 or 800 volts.
That's the volt, and then the size of the power capacity is your kilowatt. So my Leaf is
Right.
24 kilowatts.
Oh yeah,
Teslas
maybe.
are what, typically
Yeah.
70 to 120 kilowatts. So
Let me
yeah,
just go
depends on
back
the
to
vehicle.
Yeah, I thought it said kilowatt hour.
So maybe we'll move
kilowatt
on to another question. Somebody else with a question?
Thank
Hi,
you.
Jonathan. My name is Norm. When you were talking about the, excuse me, the high density voltage wires going across from northwest China down to Guangzhou and the coast, what are
Yes.
what are the environmental concerns, I guess, in China, and are they addressed at all?
The environmental concerns. Oh, you mean like is this having an impact on the forests and the wildlife and all that sort of thing?
That kind of thing, and I guess I was thinking too of populations that are in pretty close proximity to those high voltage. I can't remember the name of the wires, but
Yeah,
the high voltage DC.
high voltage DC, ultra
Yes,
high voltage
yes,
DC.
yes.
So
That's it. Yes, correct.
one of the main differences between here and there is that you don't have property landowners who say, I don't want that, you know? So
Yeah, I wondered.
they can build this where they want to, you know. China can build whatever they want, where they want, wherever they want. And they take into account, of course, the whole population and what their sensitivities and their interests are. And um, what goes on with the high voltage wires is that they don't have a big impact on people on the ground. You can see that they're going across mountains, and there's very little settlement in those places. And so that's not having an impact on people. It also doesn't have a major impact on animals. I think, and another thing that I need to emphasize is that since the 1950s, China has been working on their to increase their forestry, to develop sustainable national parks. They've created huge new national parks. They're very, very concerned about biodiversity, and one of the leaders in the biodiversity conference, global biodiversity conference that are held, conferences that are held quite frequently. And the preservation of wildlife is very, very important here. It's not coming from individuals, it's coming from the government. The government saying, we need to do this. You guys need to do this. You need to keep, you know, figuratively, they're talking to the leaders in the cities and the provinces. This is what you need to do. You need to be aware of the environmental impacts of things, and this is actually part of Chinese culture, because 2,000 years ago, the emperor in China was famous for having managed the water systems so that they were rebuilt part of the water systems, the natural water systems, so that they were more more healthy, more working much better. I think that's my answer anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That adds up to stuff that I've been reading. Thank you.
About 15 years ago, I remember hearing China actually slowed down or stopped all harvesting of trees and started buying a significant amount of their wood from BC in order to help restore their forests. So anyways, continue.
Hi, it's Alan here. I was just thinking about those very high density populations with all the apartment buildings. I was just wondering what the proportion of vehicle ownership is. Does everybody have a car? And if you've got those large apartment buildings, what's the access to charging for the residents of those buildings with EVs?
Okay, well, that's still being worked on. The access to, I think, first of all, the residents people don't all have cars. That answer your first question. Many people have the small motorcycles, small motorbikes, electric motorbikes. They're all electrified now. And they're very popular. I would say the bulk of the population uses those in these rural cities. In Beijing, no. Beijing, most people will have cars. But here, there are cars, there's a lot of cars, but there's far more people on the motorbikes. And a lot of people walk. I can walk everywhere in Shenzhou. The population is so dense within the city that you have, it's much easier to get around by walking or taking a taxi or a bus. Public transport in China is absolutely amazing. It's always available and it's easy to get. So why have a car? Parking, traffic jams, gasoline. It's a problem.
Hi, Lena again.
Yes, Lena.
Hi, we've often heard of how many coal plants are being opened in China.
Yeah.
Or that's projected and that, and because I hear of all the renewable stuff that's happening, so it seems contradictory. Or like, why not, instead of coal, do the renewables? So,
Okay.
So I don't quite know what to believe.
Okay, well, it's true. What China's been doing for the past 5 years, and it's part of the 5-year plan, is engineering a transition to renewables.
Okay.
In order to do that, they need to be self-sufficient, not dependent on a gas coming from overseas or oil or coal coming from overseas. They need to be dependent. China has never had big oil deposits, oil or gas deposits in China. They've always had to import that. So their strategy is to replace all the imports as quickly as possible with new energy, with green energy. But the way they can do that, the best way they can do that is to close down the inefficient coal plants, the coal plants that are really wasteful and badly operated and old, close them down and open new coal plants that are much, much more advanced and much more much better at reducing the emissions that come from the coal. But those are much bigger, more powerful, more efficient plants that they've had to open in order to engineer this transition. So those coal plants are a backup. They're there. They've actually reduced the total number of coal plants, but they've opened new ones, which are much bigger and more powerful, and are fewer than there were there before. So those coal plants are there in case there is a breakdown of the new energy systems at any point. They're not turned on all the time. They're only used in case there is support needed, sudden support needed. Last year the Three Gorges Dam was impacted by incredible weather or problems, and it wasn't producing for some reason, and they had to bring these new coal plants in to replace the energy briefly for a certain period of time until the water system was there. But this is sort of thing is going to happen during climate change. Is there's going to be times when things break down, and especially the old infrastructure, and it's not completely replaced by the new infrastructure, and the grids are not modernized to the extent that they should be. So you still need to have safety valve. You still need to have coal plants to support that. That's their reasoning.
Right. So in other words, we're hearing it makes it sound like they're building more and more coal plants, but what we're not hearing is that they're shutting down the old ones.
That's
and
right.
Like replacing them with more efficient ones. And so the whole
That's
idea
right.
of people in Canada or the US kind of having this thought of exporting a bunch of LNG to China is might be kind of not very well warranted. Could I say that?
Well,
or should it be? Maybe.
I think if you're thinking about exporting gas or oil from British Columbia, from Alberta on the pipeline, I think that's going to be a dead loser. That's not going to work, because they're not interested in that. It's just expensive. As long as they've got their own resources, China are going to stick with their own resources and develop their own resources. That's where they see the advantage of new energy, especially, is that they're not going to be reliant on Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Iran and North America for oil and gas anymore, and coal from Australia. They won't need it.
Right. So
To put that into context, can you talk about how much renewable capacity China's installed compared to the US or the world?
I think it's
I imagine it's way
basically
more.
about 50% of the total world's production. Basically, it's producing.
So they're
It's
a
got
huge
the capacity.
country.
About, sorry, Doug.
They're a huge country. I think there's like 100 people per Canadian sort of ratio, and their middle class is growing. So there is an increase in demand, I assume, for energy. So they're probably needing more and more energy as their economy's improving. But at the same time, I heard last year, 2023, they installed as much solar in 1 year as the US had ever installed in the entire history of the US.
Right. Well, that's true. I mean, all those facts are online. It's every year. It's basically doubling from the year before. It's the number one priority in China is the transition to renewable energy, to green energy. It's the number one priority for the government.
So I was wondering, Doug and Bob online, do either you have questions? If you can unmute and speak, or try to put something in the chat. And Anne has a question up here. Oh, Doug's going to ask one.
Hear me okay? Oh,
Yeah.
Hello?
Sorry, Doug, go ahead. I think you unmuted yourself.
Doug, you're very, very, very faint.
okay. It's probably because, hang on a sec.
Still faint. Talk right into your mic and yell.
All right. So it's because of the system I'm using. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So actually, you've asked a lot of questions I had, but so I'm just going to make a comment. It's astounding the variety of EVs they have over there, and really points out how we're dragging our heels over here. I really like that that Jilly, or how you say that, Jilly pickup truck. But anyways, no, beyond that comment, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, well, that's
Thanks,
good
Doug.
to hear.
Go for
Thanks,
it, Anne.
Doug.
Okay. Jonathan, I have sort of a controversial question, but I'm still curious.
Sure.
Yeah, so you lived in China for a very long time, and I was wondering if the very fast transition to EVs and renewable energy, and frankly, the unprecedented mobilization of people towards this transition is also because China is, let's say, it's more authoritarian in terms of its government rather than democratic. And so things are more efficient there. I mean, there's plus and minuses, of course. So if the government says, let's do this, they can just mobilize lots of people to do it. And I assume there's no unions, there's less, bureaucratic processes.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, just living here, I don't know how it's like in China.
Okay.
So.
Well, let me just I gave you that 2,000 year thing, about Chenzhou, over 2,000 years. It's been around. So throughout that time, China has had a political system. They've had the very first, since then, they've had a bureaucracy in place ever since, for 2,000 years, over 2,000 years. And it was fundamental part of the culture is the government. So there's government at 3-4 levels, at least 3 levels. So there's the central government, and then there's the provincial government, and then there's the city government. And then there's a sub about the districts in each city or in each administrative area. So those are embedded, those 4 different levels of government have been around for 2,000 years. That's the way China works. It's fundamentally built in. It's not authoritarian in the way that we think, like sort of the leader is telling everybody what to do. No, Xi Jinping is a graduate of Beijing University, where he studied chemical engineering. The leaders in China are all well educated. They're all people that have some skill. In fact, there's a lot of engineers in the leadership, and they have this a completely different system. It's not democracy. It's not autocracy. It's the government is part of the whole structure of the country. It's embedded in everything, and it's about guidance. So the government does the top government will do a 5-year plan. Every 5 years, they do a plan for the next 5 years. This is what we're going to achieve. This is how it's going to work. And they send that to the next level down. The next level down decides, so the next level is the provincial level. The provincial says, okay, we're going to do these things. How are we going to do them? How are we going to achieve these goals? Probably because our province has a different nature. It has different characteristics. It has different goals than another province would do it. We do it this way. So each province and each city will make their own decisions on how to implement that overall policy. And they'll do it differently. They'll decide what fits with our local people. How does it work with our local people? And they'll talk to people, and they'll talk to businessmen, and they'll talk to, and sometimes they will become, the city government will become an investor in a new startup. They will provide the investment, and they will say, yeah, we want to see you do this, and they'll encourage it, and they will push it forward. So this is how government works in China.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Hi, it's Tom here. I'm also an engineer, but just for the group, China is a very big country. It's just a touch smaller than Canada in surface area. Canada's 1.95% of the land area of the globe, and China's 1.88, and the US is 1.87. Okay, now it's commendable what China's trying to accomplish, because globally, they're 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions. Canada's 1.4, the US 11. And depending what year you look at, these vary a bit, but some countries are going in the right direction. Some are very close, very unchanged. So in terms of per capita, which doesn't really mean anything in my opinion, we're high, 19.4 tons per person. China's 11.1, but they have 40 times as many people. But I think it's commendable what they're doing. It's just incredible how they're electrifying.
Okay, so Bob, you haven't said anything. If you want to unmute or type something in. Otherwise, I think what we'll do is call this a wrap. We're a bit after 8 o'clock. And Jonathan, thank you. Very informative. has me thinking, and I'm going to revisit some of your information later and think it through even further.
Well, I'm very pleased to have this opportunity, Doug, and it's very wonderful to meet you people and anybody else. And thank you for your questions. And it's great to actually make this kind of communication outside China, because I've been here for 8 years in Chenzhou, and before that 7 years in Beijing. So I think it's always difficult for me to explain what goes on here to other people outside. And this gives me an opportunity to give some insight to what's going on here. So thank you.
Excellent. There's applause if you don't hear it. And
Yeah,
next month, we have a research group coming in who want to, in a sense, interview us and have a discussion. We will do a live streaming of it. Next month won't be recorded. We did record tonight, so as long as everything works well, that'll get posted and will be in the next newsletter as to where to get it. And Jonathan, I'll send that to you sooner than that. So
Okay.
Please be involved with the next month's meeting. Take a look at the newsletters to see what it's about and try to drag other counterparts out who are interested and concerned about the energy transition. It's an important dialogue that might actually shape our direction, sort of like the upper level plan that Jonathan talked about in China. So thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Anne.